Hello everyone, this is Akash reading news from Project Syndicate. Can the US and China make a deal? Driven by domestic nationalist forces and the need to save face, US President Donald Trump and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping have continued to escalate the bilateral trade war. Despite their shared interest in resolving it before the end of the year, to make a deal, both sides need to start taking substantive steps immediately. Now that the celebrations marking the 17th anniversary of founding of People's Republic of China are over, it is time to direct attention back to the Sino-America trade war. That conflict may well be about to enter its endgame. Indeed, the next round of negotiations could be the last real chance to find a way through the trade, technology, and wider economic imbroglio that has been engulfing both countries. Feeling that the world should start preparing for its rockiest economic ride since the 2008 global financial crisis. There is a real risk that America will slide into recession and that the global economy will experience a broader decoupling that will poison the bell for Sino-American relations far into the future. There is also a widening window of opportunity for nationalist constituencies in both countries to argue that conflict inevitable. Thus far, the trade war has gone through four phases. Phase 1 began last March when US President Donald Trump announced the first round of import tariffs on Chinese goods. Phase 2 arrived on the Argentina reset at the G20 summit in Buenos Aires last December when Trump and Chinese President Jinping announced that they would conclude an argument within 19 days. That truce imploded in early May of this year, with each side accusing the other of demanding major last minute challenges to the draft agreement. Phase 3 could be described as the summer of our discontent. The United States imposed a fresh round of import tariffs, and China retaliated in kind, while also unveiling its answer to the US entity list. It responds to the blacklisting of Hawaii and five other Chinese tech companies. China's politically titled unreliable entities list threatens to target US firms for exclusion. Given these developments, why should anyone expect the next round of talk to succeed? For starters, the US and China economies are in trouble. In the US, recent poor manufacturing and private sector employment figures have reinforced pessimism about the economy's prospects. If conditions were to deteriorate further, Trump's bid for re-election in November 2020 would be endangered. Likewise, Jim would be weakened by any significant slowdown on the eve of the Communist Party of China's centenary celebrations in 2021, which will be a prelude to his bid for an already controversial third term starting in 2020. Each side says publicly that the trade war is hurting the other side more. But of course, it is hurting both by destabilizing markets, destroying business confidence, and undermining growth. Each side also claims to have the economic resilience needed to ride out an extended conflict. On this question, it is unclear who has the stronger argument. America is certainly less trade dependent than China, but China, though weakened by poor domestic policy choices enacted before the trade war, still has stronger fiscal, monetary, and credit tools as its disposal. In any case, both sides recognize that they are each holding an economic gun to the other's head. Hence, despite the political posturing, both Trump and Jim Z ultimately want a deal. Moreover, they need it to happen by the end of the year to prevent further damage from big tariff hikes currently scheduled to take effect on December 15. That timeline requires that both sides start taking symbolic and substantive steps immediately. At the first step, China should promise an agreement using the same text as the previous 150-page draft, but with revisions to satisfy its three red lines. Specifically, China should remove the US provisions from retaining tariffs after the agreement is signed, and for unilaterally reimposing tariffs if the US concludes that China is not honoring the agreement. And if it should add a commitment that China will execute the agreement in a way that is consistent with its constitutional, legislative, and regulatory processes. Second, China should improve its original offer of a $200 billion reduction in the bilateral trade deficit over time. This negotiation point is based on lossy economies, but it is important to Trump politically and personally. Third, while China will want to avoid banning state subsidies for Chinese industry and enterprises, it must retain the draft agreement's existing provisions on the protection of intellectual property and the provision of forces technology transfers. Moreover, it may be possible to have each country declare its position on the state industrial policy in the official communique accompanying the signing of the agreement. Such a statement could even specify the domestic and international arbitration mechanism that will be used to enforce all relevant laws on competitive neutrality. Fourth, both sides must create a more positive political atmosphere. In recent weeks, there have been signs that this may happen, including reports of renewed Chinese purchases of American soybeans in September. Though purchases are still well below historical levels, this increase will help Trump to placate angry farmers in his base. The US, meanwhile, has already deferred a 5% tariff hike that was originally scheduled for October 1. It could also issue exemptions from some US firms to sell non-sensitive inputs to Hawaii. Fifth, both sides should retard the November 14-16 Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Santiago as the last chance for signing a deal. Following high-level negotiations between Chinese Vice Premier Liu He and U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lightgeorges this month, outstanding problems should be agreed in Beijing in early November. Getting the deal done before Thanksgiving will be critical to undergird US business and consumer confidence for the Christmas season. I am one of the few commenters who have argued all year this despite the political fireworks, Trump and Xi's underlying interest make a deal more likely than not. But the recently announced impeachment proceedings against Trump could throw a wrench into this process. A weakened Trump may be embodied uh, to take a tougher line against China than US economic interest demand. On balance, however, Trump still cannot afford the risk of a 2020 recession, meaning that a deal remains more probable than not. Nonetheless, a failure to manage the next two political months could still cause the entire process to collapse. Both sides have already spent much time preparing a plan B for 2020 to let loose the dogs of economic bars, foment nationalist sentiment, and blame the other side for ensuing damage. Should that happen, the risk of recession in the US, Europe, and Australia next year will be high, though China would seek to soften the domestic blow through further fiscal and monetary stimulus. The choice now facing the US and China is stark. For the rest of the world, the stakes could be higher. This commentary is based on a recent address to a US Chamber of Commerce in Beijing.